There is a strange contradiction at the heart of Genshin Impact. On one hand, it is one of the most successful games ever made, a massive, beautifully crafted open world that you can, for the most part, play entirely for free. On the other hand though, its community often seems to be in a constant state of frustration, locked in a cycle of high expectations and deep disappointment. Or sometimes it's low expectations and they get disappointed anyway. It's a complex issue, okay? And you see this captured all the time by content creators who break down the latest developer livestream and point out this strange disconnect between what the company says and what the players actually experience. It raises a fundamental question: why does this keep happening? Are these just a series of unforced errors from a developer that is out of touch, or is there something more deliberate at play? This video is an attempt to look past the day-to-day drama and to understand that question, to examine the HoYoverse paradox, and to figure out if these constant contradictions are a flaw in their business model, or if they are the business model itself. Ooh. It has been lingering for a long time, this problem, and one we will be exploring a lot on this channel. So if you're interested in more discussions that take a critical look at the problems in the gacha space, consider liking the video and subscribing because it helps a lot. But to start, you need to understand the official story HoYoverse tells the world. You have to first look at their public philosophy. It is built on two core ideas that, on the surface, they sound pretty good. The first is the image of the benevolent developer, a narrative HoYoverse often projects about itself. This has led to a deeply sarcastic meme within the community nowadays. Genshin does not want to make money. I mean, who says that? Am I right? But it's now precisely to highlight the massive gap between that official narrative and the game's actual practices. Looking at their revenue, which sailed past $4 billion way back in 2022, and last month they made like what, 50 million or something mobile alone, you can understand the blatant rage bait these devs are trying to do. But the reason this narrative probably has any legs at all is probably because HoYoverse does some things that other companies in this space kinda rarely do. For example, think about cosmetic skins. Most live service games, and I'm not talking about the big three or the big four, right? I'm talking about generally most live service games, they flood their shops with new outfits constantly because it's easy money. In Genshin, a new skin is a rare event. They give some away for free and almost always tie the paid ones into a story. The perception it gives is that they value the world's integrity more than a quick buck. The same goes for giving a free 5-star character. The effect is an image of a developer focused on the art, not on squeezing every last dollar out of you. This is an image. Remember, this is an image. You need to hear me out here. The second image of their philosophy is the no excessive anxiety doctrine. This one comes directly from the source. In an interview with GameSpot in 2022, the developers were asked about adding more difficult endgame content. Their response was that they were hesitant because it might cause excessive anxiety for the players. Well, essentially, they're saying they're actively protecting the casual majority from stress. They would rather add something relaxing, like the in-game card game that nobody plays.
I guess Mondstadt's economy is powered by hopes and dreams. And also, the card game. Look, Timmy, I know your dad's dead and all, but do you want to play Gwent?
Then something that makes people feel pressured. They position themselves as guardians of low-stress experience. These two ideas work together to form a carefully constructed image of a developer that seems unusually generous and deeply concerned with its players' well-being. This official framework, however, was tested early and dramatically. That first major test happened in September 2021, the game's first anniversary. Expectations were incredibly high. This is partly because players of HoYoverse's older title, Genshin Impact 3rd, were kinda used to generous anniversary events. The community was expecting a real celebration. What they got instead was work. They got a job, which is probably a gift for most people nowadays, but what if you don't win? You just don't get paid. Instead of substantial in-game gifts, the celebration was a series of community contests for cosplays and fan art, alongside web events with lottery-based prizes. Your reward for a year of loyalty was a chance to win something. You weren't being given a gift, you were being asked to create more marketing material for free. The community's reaction was swift and massive. A coordinated review bombing campaign on the Google Play Store crashed the game's rating from a healthy 4.5 stars to below 2.0 in hours. Official Genshin Discord channels were flooded with hate and criticism that they restricted and put it on slow mode, and it's flooded with 𝗖cie emoji to show how fed up everyone was. And then it got weird. The protest famously spilled over to unrelated apps. People were leaving 1-star reviews on Google Classroom and Clash of Clans or other games like that, with comments complaining about Genshin's anniversary. It was a digital riot. It was so bad that it set up a new culture for the gacha space. Every time a bad anniversary is being announced, Google Classroom will get review bombed for some reason. And this was never about players just wanting free stuff. It was a fundamental rejection of the relationship HoYoverse was offering. Players felt they had proven their loyalty and support, but in return, were being treated like a marketing demographic to be engaged, not like partners who had helped build this success. The anniversary showed the community had a line. And when it comes to the game's core content, the characters, the developers' responses have shown an even more fascinating and calculated evolution. To see this evolution, you only need to look at two specific moments: the story of Zhongli and the story of 𝗖𝗆. Both were highly anticipated characters, central to their nation's stories, and released in a severely underpowered state. How HoYoverse handled them tells you everything about how their strategy has changed. First, Zhongli in version 1.1. As the Geo Archon, the hype was enormous, but on release his abilities were flawed. He did almost no damage. Like, he kicks his spear as a basic attack and it does no damage. He summons a meteor from the sky and it's kind of mid. He was often worse than some widely available 4-star characters. But now looking back at the game, I guess nobody can beat our god Xiangling, right? The community's reaction went far beyond disappointment though at that time, escalating into massive unified outrage and accusations of false advertising. HoYoverse's first response was to basically say, "You're just using him wrong. This only made things worse." Faced with a potential revolt, they did a complete 180 and announced a massive post-release buff that transformed Zhongli into one of the most powerful characters in the game. This set a precedent, an unwritten rule. The community learned that if the backlash was big enough, they could force a developer to fix a character after the release. And now fast forward to over 2 years to 𝗖𝗆 in version 3.5. She was arguably in a much worse state than Zhongli. Her kit was a mess of bugs and abilities that worked against each other. Her damage was so low that using her was often a net loss. The community reacted just as loudly, and this time compiling exhaustive documents and videos cataloging every flaw, fully expecting the Zhongli president to apply. They made their case and waited for the fix. But HoYoverse's response this time? Complete and total silence. In a way, I think this is a strategic pivot. The Zhongli buff came when the game was young and HoYoverse was vulnerable. The 𝗖𝗆 decision came from a position of immense market dominance. They intentionally broke the precedent they had set years earlier, and sending a clear message. The era of community-forced character buffs was over. This shift points to the deeper systemic reality that governs the game, the economic engine working behind the curtain. So let's talk about that engine. You have to understand the gacha system itself. It functions less like a simple slot machine and more like a finely tuned financial instrument, likely designed with input from teams of psychologists and economists. Its job is to convert desire into spending. It starts with the odds, a tiny 0.6 base probability for a 5-star. To counter this, the game has a pity system, but the real psychological hook is the 50-50. When you finally hit pity, you only have a 50% chance of getting the character on the banner. This near miss is a powerful motivator to keep spending. According to an estimate someone made, securing a guarantee can cost as much as $365 for one character. And then there's a weapon banner, which the community often calls a scam or a whale trap. For a long time, it had no ultimate guarantee system at all. Their fix was a system requiring up to a staggering 240 wishes to guarantee a weapon. It is a tool to make spending more predictable for the higher spenders, not a feature for the average player. This is all wrapped in deceptive marketing. On the Google Play Store, you won't find words like gacha, gambling, or loot box, making it a minefield for parents and younger players, especially with the ease of one-click purchasing. The monetization also goes deeper. The game has known to be selling solutions to problems it creates by monetizing core gameplay mechanics. It is about pulling for essential quality of life features. The cleanest example is exploration. Core abilities like grappling or improved wall climbing are now locked exclusively to limited time 5-star characters. These characters only appear on banners that rerun every 6 to 7 months, manufacturing a powerful sense of urgency, the fear of missing out. And the most cynical part, these expensive abilities are often region locked. You might pay hundreds of dollars for a character with a cool traversal skill, only to find it works at full power in one specific region. It essentially turns a permanent character into a temporary rental for the new content. And finally, there's the illusion of balance, managed through power creep. There is horizontal progression, which means getting new characters that do different things, and vertical progression, which is getting new characters that are simply stronger. In the past, Genshin focused on horizontal progression. Kazuha, for example, didn't make Venti useless, but that has been changing, especially since the release of the Dendro element, which raised the power ceiling. They managed this creep carefully so your old characters don't feel useless overnight. This avoids financial anxiety for players, which in turn protects their long-term revenue stream. This complex engine is protected by that benevolent philosophy, but it also protected by a segment of the community that defends these practices. This is where the dynamic gets really interesting because you see a cycle play out time and time again. It usually starts with a developer livestream. A recent example was a presentation where the host proudly said, "Compared to last year, the rewards and optimizations this year are hitting way harder, like this masterless Stella Fortuna." Wow! In practice, hitting way harder meant getting duplicates for characters many considered B tier and a new level cap system with punishing math. You can now level characters past 90, but only if you already had them at C6. And even then, you needed 3 more duplicates of that maxed out character to do it. The community's reaction to this being presented as a gift was negative, with many criticizing the host for, as they put it, acting like Weasley little liars, dude. It felt dishonest. But then, the second part of the cycle begins. As criticism mounts, a predictable set of arguments emerges from parts of the community that defend the developer. There is always the classic, "It's a free game, you are not entitled." This ignores the reality of a business model that generates billions. The game is free the same way a casino floor is free to walk on. And then comes, "If you don't like it, just quit." This dismisses the criticism that often comes from the most invested players, the ones who want the game to improve. And finally, the ultimate shield. "It is a gacha game. It is always a gacha game. Of course they're gonna make money. Of course they're gonna be predatory." This argument is used to excuse any and all problems and normalize mediocrity. It is like going to an all-you-can-eat buffet and being served stale bread and then accepting it, glorping it, because that's just what this particular buffet serves. It is a mindset that allows developers to do the bare minimum and get away with it. The counter-argument, of course, is the call for players to be active fans, to demand better from a multi-billion-dollar company instead of passively accepting whatever table scraps they're given. This frames criticism as engagement from a community that knows what the game is capable of. And so this cycle continues, which brings us to the central question. What does this all mean at the end? When you put all the pieces together, the HoYoverse paradox isn't a sign of incompetence or hypocrisy. It is the business model. HoYoverse has become a master of operating 2 completely different versions of Genshin Impact at the same time, within the same product. The first version is the game, the beautiful, content-rich, accessible open-world RPG that you can download and play for hundreds of hours without spending a single dollar. It is the version filled with art, incredible music, and exploration. This is the product they advertise. But version 2 is the engine, the ruthless, psychologically tuned monetization system running just beneath the surface. The gacha, the weapon banner, the monetized quality of life features. It is a cold, calculated machine designed for maximum profit. This is the product they sell. The unprecedented success of Genshin Impact lies in their ability to keep a wall between these 2 tracks for the vast majority of players. All of the controversies we've discussed are simply the moments when that wall breaks. They are the predictable points of impact when the harsh reality of the engine becomes painfully visible to the players who are just trying to enjoy the game. And while this model is ruthlessly efficient, it's always important to remember that the fundamental truth of any live service game ultimately is the community. It is not the corporations that gives these worlds life. But you know, that is all from me. That is just my opinion from 𝗖cie𝗽𝘆𝗶𝗵𝗁, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers!